We're going to move on to the second keynote of this session, and I'm delighted to welcome Professor Beata Batorowicz, who is an occupational therapist and who is based at the School of Rehabilitation Therapy at Queen's University. Well, I didn't know where Queen's University was, so I discovered it's in Kingston. And Kingston is actually on the shores of Lake Ontario in Canada. It looks like a very nice place. Beata Batorowicz has more than 20 years of clinical but also academic experience in the field of childhood disability. She focuses a lot on assistive technology, augmentative and alternative communication, also called AAC. And I'd say the main concern of her research is really how she can promote and enrich participation of children and of youngsters with disabilities, and especially those who rely typically on AAC or on technology. Just to mention a couple of the aspects of her academic work, she's the current chair of the research committee of the International Society for AAC. She's an associate editor of the AAC Journal, and she has over 50 publications in numerous peer-reviewed journals and is regularly invited to give conferences in Europe, North America, and South America. Today, Professor Batorowicz is going to be addressing the question of opening doors to meaningful life participation, something which will certainly resonate with all of you. So, Professor Batorowicz, the audience is yours.
Thank you so much for the nice invitation, and good morning, very early morning here in Canada. It's still night. And first, I would like to thank you, the organizing committee, for such an invitation. And I'm delighted to be here today at this meeting. And I hope to meet many of you face-to-face in the near future. In my talk, I'm planning to take you on the mission to open multiple doors leading from childhood to adulthood. And I intend to highlight how walking through those doors to adulthood may be facilitated by certain actions and interventions, working with children with disabilities and their families. So here it is. Here is Kingston. I welcome you from Kingston, Ontario, where now all of you know where it is, on the Lake Ontario, not too far from Toronto. It's in between Montreal and Toronto. And we just got a bunch of snow at night. So actually plows were just outside my window right now, and more snow is coming. And the snow plays a significant role in participation. And of course, especially when we consider activities and meaningful activities, and also some of the barriers that we experience to participation for people with disabilities. Let's first meet Zoe. So I would like to introduce to you Zoe, and she's 10 years old. She has cerebral palsy. She's using a power wheelchair for mobility and speech generating device and other communication, augmentative and alternative communication systems to help her to communicate. She's motivated to communicate, interested in the activities as any other 10-year-old would be. She shows initiative. Her family is interested in different opportunities, open to suggestions and information, motivated and self-driven. So here we have a child who without CP, cerebral palsy, would be like any other child. We would call it typical child. But despite those characteristics and tremendous supportive family, this is the picture from research. Reality for many of the children that use augmentative and alternative communication and have severe motor impairments as well as communication impairments is different. From the emerging research, we know that their interactions are dominated by speaking partners. They have limited occasions for activity engagement, less frequent participation in out-of-school activities, restricted involvement with peers, and extremely small social networks, which consist mostly of family, closest family, and paid professionals. So that would be us, doctors, therapists, as well as teachers. So work with these children and in the area of communication is bigger than the ability to communicate or developing communicative competence. Ultimately, it is about the quality of life, well-being, relationships, and experience system critical and experiences over time. So it is very important that we examine and focus on the environmental influences and factors that support communication and social interaction and participation of children and young people. So what do we want for our children? What is the path, success and trajectory? We want the active child, conceptually thinking. So when we, for example, consider the unified theory of development of Samaroff or Bronfenbrenner's ecological model, they tell us of a need to focus on an environment and context and that interaction and transaction between the child and the environment. And how Catherine Nelson said it very eloquently, that development depends on experience and learning gained from the unique perspective of a child in the midstream of becoming a person. And the child actively seeks meaningful experiences relevant to her current needs and interests and makes pragmatic sense of what she encounters in the world, in close relation with adults who care for, support, and guide her. So the child is active. And in the study with my colleagues from Poland, with Dr. Kulis, with over 400 participating families, we found that children thought about activities and their participation very differently than their parents. They had different preferences and choices, and the activities after school for children with disabilities were still curriculum related very often. They were not about fun and leisure and play. So active means not only physically doing, I wanted to make that note early on, but also being involved cognitively and emotionally. So at the heart of our work and are the long-term developmental consequences or benefits, and they are competency-related skill development, and I think we're focusing on that quite a bit. Academic benefits for the children, but there are also psychological, emotional benefits long-term related to self-advocacy, identity, self-concept, and also social relations related to relationships and also civic engagement. So the technology and all of the supports that we have are augmentative and alternative communication systems, such as communication books or speech generating devices and strategies provide means and tools to accomplish those long-term benefits. So what we will see if we succeed is the child that will belong, be able to be meaningfully engaged, become an adult with developed preferences and individual aspirations and goals, and have a self-understanding. So what matters is not only developing skills, but also connection with others and relationship. So it means involvement in family activities, interactions. Then the world, of course, expands for children, so it's involvement in the neighborhood and communities. As a principle, what matters is the everyday activities for children, where their family goes, how the family spends time, with whom, and what are the family preferences. And we need to understand that. We need to develop relationship with families to be able to have that holistic view as the children spend a lot of time outside of school or preschool settings. And certainly when we see them in our clinics or places where we work, that's very different. We don't have that real life environmental perspective of what actually the context of the children activities look like. So we need to understand that to be able to support the child in the unique context of the family. We're all very familiar with that definition. And we know that understanding participation, that has been quite a bit of work done in terms of that. So it is about breadth of participating in various life domains. It can be about the entry into the life situation or observable doing within the life situations. But it's also the subjective meaning of participation, taking part, being included, have a sense of control, and obtaining a certain goal. So how do we enable children to be active, engaged physically, but also in terms of emotional, cognitive, and culturally meaningful engagement? So today, I will walk with you through the 4 doors, and they symbolize the process by which we achieve or may achieve social participation. And the door is a pathway. And the goal for me is to show some of the complexity involved that we cannot really shy away from. It is very complex, and gets messy, and it is not easy. And I think it is our role to realize that and to take this path or open multiple doors at the same time, and also look at the achievements of the children. So the door number 1 is engagement in childhood activity settings. The activity settings concept gives us a concrete context in which participation is considered. So it's a context of participation. And when the children are young, they are in different activities. We think about play, and then that, when the children get older, gets replaced by conversation or hanging out together with peers typically. So the activity settings are places and spaces where children do things. So that combines the notion of a place and activity, because playing chess on a computer alone at home is a very different experience than playing a chess on a board with friends. So if I take you to the library, based on the interdisciplinary integration of the conceptual literature from different fields, actually it's quite simple when we narrow it down. There are following dimensions in activity settings that are linked to each other, and they are intertwined and linked together. Where people, it's about the place and space, it's about the activity, what is going on in this particular setting. It's about the objects, which in this case would be books, any supports and resources, and the time or timing of the activities. So those are the elements that we can, in fact, address through our interventions. We can affect the training of people. We can change how the space looks like. We can adapt the activities. We can provide more resources or assistive technology or technology that will support participation and engagement of children. And we can also offer the activities at a different time that families maybe can attend, or a varied time, providing different opportunities. Of course, in this time, it gets much more complicated, as now we acknowledge the virtual environment, so social media and communication. And this would be a very separate topic in the lecture. But what matters is that right now, this virtual environment, it's also real. It's a real life setting. Let's have now a closer look at each of these elements and what can be done and what have been done, what have been done through research to see what may be supportive for children and their participation. So when we look at the activity, we know from research that for children, we need motivating activities, engaging. They need to be exciting. It is about curiosity. It is about fun. It is also about, and that's an important point, about choice and control. So we can modify the activities and the way they are done so the children can play and interact together on equal footage with their peers, for example. So that can be or selecting activities that naturally involve and rely on turn-taking. So for the children that use augmentative and alternative communication or communication aids, they have an opportunity to say something. And when we modify the activity the way it is done, we can put the child that perhaps is, for the child takes much longer to communicate, we can put the child in control of the information. And we have done that through research with success, resulting in a very genuine interaction in between the children. So what matters also is a variety of experiences in play and social interactions with peers. So many in terms of the breadth of activities, providing different experiences, and also frequency and practice. So routine has a place and routine is needed, but what we often miss with children like Zoe is variety, opportunity to develop preferences, to learn from the experience, what I like, what I don't like. And I have many examples from my own practice about that children often are with disabilities or children who use augmentative communication would be in activities that are just offered in the community. So there will be two choices for parents. And then I recall this one boy who was really crying all the time. And at the end, when he was able to calm down and communicate, he said that he just didn't like that particular activity. He hated it. But that was something that was available for him. And the parents maybe thought that he would like it. However, he had a choice. We gave him a choice to say, and that was the outcome. So it is about choice and control for children. It is about self-direction and advocacy. So we have to start when the children are very young to show the children that they can be in control and give them the power. And communication and the way to communicate for many children with severe motor impairments gives them that power. So my reality for the child is, I am who I am. I have cerebral palsy. I can still decide. I can direct. I can be in control. I can tell you what to do. So it is about opportunities for choices in daily interaction, asking children to select their clothes, what to wear in the morning, activities, what they want to do, if there is a choice, or making more complex decisions, what they want to do on the weekend, or some of the planning of the activities. And it is about teaching children like Zoe very early on that they can say and they are listened to instead of doing something for them. So if the child says, I need help, does not necessarily show dependency, it shows the control. And I think we do fairly well in therapy if it comes to instrumental choices, or some of the technology to allow children to play, like we adapt toys for children to access with switches early on. And that's great. I think that's needed. They can control physically their environment, but it's also what is needed is being involved in play with peers in social interactions. So in one of the research projects, Becoming Aided Communicator, which we actually did with 16 different countries, when we provided children with information that communication partners did not know, they suddenly became attractive communication partners. So some of that information was funny, like relying information, what they've seen on the video, and some was improbable, like they saw that a man was walking a pineapple and they laughed, and adults didn't believe them. They said there was something wrong with their devices when they were saying that, but the children, their peers did, because they interacted with different communication partners. So despite that the children did not have much experiences in real life situations, they were able to problem solve and somehow succeed in those interactions and tasks that we asked the children to do. So the children who used augmentative communication, and there were children between 5 and 15 years old, could direct the actions of their peers using communication. And the interaction was 5 times longer than for the peers without disabilities. So the time is, we realized that is an issue. And it was challenging for them to communicate precisely because of course, vocabulary is stored externally. It's not like we can easily access our words, and it takes time to look for that vocabulary, and very often that vocabulary or precise words you're looking for might not be available on a communication device. However, despite these little challenges, we found that even the youngest children, 5 years old, had fun. They were engaged with their peers, and that kept conversation and interaction going. In another study, we asked children to videotape their activity settings and tell us about that. So this was more meant like a language-free assessment of the environment. So we use now technology is available. We use a very cheap smart glasses that were cool, that children love to wear, and we could adapt, and they provided opportunities to record through looking. So this could serve as a basis for further conversation and interview, and finding out from the perspective of the children what they perceive themselves as challenges or barriers or facilitators, as we call it. But children have coded the world and activities as seen through their eyes. So, and that research is in progress, so it will be very interesting to at one time to look at that and see how that all worked out. But the glasses work that they record where you're looking. So there is an aspect of participation through communication and language when we realize that for many children with physical and communication impairments and severe physical impairments, of course, exploration physically of the world is very challenging and sometimes not possible. And attaining that physical independence is not really realistic, or it's not efficient. Sometimes we, and I have done it in my early practice, I remember as well that we built all these independent tools and allowed children to control the environment and computers, even young children, but it took so much time and they missed out on social interaction. So they need means to interact with their world, and language for many of the children with severe motor impairments is the best skill and important tool for acting on their environment. And therefore, it's important to keep that in mind through our intervention. And next, we also consider place, if you remember the library picture. So what the place is welcoming, supporting, we know from research, the place can support to different extent the conversations or interactions through some of the noise level, lightening, signage, but also how it is designed. Now in Canada, we design new schools that they have this social hub in the middle. There's like a central place that all the children have to come through. So naturally, the design supports social interaction. So one of my doctoral students now in rehabilitation science is actually an architect from India, and he studies design of school built space to support meaningful engagement of children with disabilities. So we're crossing these professional boundaries in our research and practice, actually, because as the world gets more complicated, for the things to deal with those complexities and trying to unpack many of them as well. So the second door is technology and innovation. And that's a huge, of course, topic, because the technology has now endless possibilities. And we know about it. It offers amazing opportunities for people with a variety of disabilities to actually have jobs, to be successfully employed. Maybe many of you heard that many people with disabilities, for example, they operate drones, or they are web designers, and I know a few of my they used to be my patients and my clients, and now they are successfully employed. And technology offers those possibilities, and there are many other ones that we start to realize, and we don't realize yet the way we think. Right now, we are doing a project at Queen's University with my colleagues of unlocking emotions of children with severe disabilities, those children that we cannot really communicate with and understand. So we are working with computer science and artificial intelligence to find out how we can understand children's emotions. And parents play tremendous role in that research, helping us to identify certain behaviors and emotions and interpret that as well. So I would like to, there are different technologies. Of course, we have eye gaze for communication, which is complicated. We have switches. We have children can communicate with technology through pointing with eyes, as I said. There are speech generating devices that are getting much more sophisticated and allow also to control the environment. But there are multiple complexities that are involved also in using technology, as we realize in real life interactions. So I would like to highlight some of those complexities involved and point to the tremendous achievements of many of the children and people that use aided language and communication aids to be able to communicate successfully. So the problem and complexities we are facing are multiple. Each of the tools in terms of technology is designed with different representations, organizations, and layout of information, as well as different access techniques. So we know we are sweeping, typing, double tapping, and each of these different designs imposes different, of course, cognitive, motor, sensory, perceptual, and also linguistic, some of them, demands, learning demands for individuals and children with complex communication needs. And in the assessment process, we're trying to uncover and untangle all those complexities and not only how to operate, of course, the device, but also in relation to all of the other aspects that I mentioned. And the research, emerging research demonstrates that it's not only about the motor skills and visual, but it's about linguistic processing. It's so many other aspects, of course, are involved. So if we take an example here and imagine a child using a communication device, then of course there's attention that needs to be paid to a task or instruction. Thinking, then next you need to think what to say, thinking how to say it, looking for the vocabulary, deciding if it's better to spell or maybe use graphic symbol, where are all those things located, then noticing and repairing mistakes on the way. Then where's the communication partner? What is happening? Maybe the partner left and it's doing something else. And there are all the external interruptions, the bell rings and something else happens. And then you try to remember, okay, what was the question? What was I trying to say? So it's about working memory, it's about attention, constant problem solving as we see different things on the way, the same way as I use that metaphor as we go shopping, right? And we know what we want, but on the way, as we look for the thing, we see so many other things and we buy them. So there's so many distractions. So if you can imagine, I wanted really to, in that lecture, to recognize amazing achievements of the children and young people who use augmentative communication and technology and other resources and low-tech or communication books. And in the middle of that, I also wanted to note that, of course, the interaction has purpose. So if you imagine you're trying to make a friend, you're trying to tell a secret to somebody, and you have to do all of that. Here we know that the time is a significant factor. And the time, even with the current technology, it's not really going away. It is a factor, it's going to be there. So there are trade-offs in between construction and independence, formulation of a message using technology versus social interaction. So if we look at this slide, I just wanted to show you on the left, when we analyze the interaction of a child with a peer and also with a parent, communication, really constructing and making communication message, constructing a message using device was 82% of the interaction, and only 12% of that interaction was looking at the communication partner, checking if there is still attention. And in the meantime, the parents would make a tea, the children will run around and swing, or trying to give all the answers or other options, or ask new questions. So this is a quote from one of the mothers that talking about her child, that she might not be finished communicating and the person has already left. So she will get upset, and that happens quite a lot. And it is certainly not only, as I said, face-to-face when we imagine today's world, which offers many opportunities, but also challenges. But we need to consider an array of communication possibilities and options in today's world, such as social media, communication via Instagram, Snapchats, apps, written communication, internet access, cell phones, texting, blogging, or e-commerce. And it has exploded. And I think there's lots that needs to be done to provide, to make this inclusive for everybody. But when there is less funding, we also see that the principles of innovation in action. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with Makers Making Change, that are designers across states and across Canada, and I think maybe they're also in Europe. So they're designing technologies which are more affordable. It's an open source. Also, innovation is about creative problem solving, and we problem solve with people. So having a communication device doesn't make you an effective communicator any more than having a piano makes you a musician, David Buchanan said, because effective communication is about the transfer and the meaning. So there is a communication partner, or there is, shopping, or there is blogging, or whatever I need to do, but the meaning is conveyed and the purpose is attained. So the door number 3 is network of people. I want to especially bring to our attention the importance of communication partners. So people to talk to. If you see in these pictures, of course, there's a child, there's all the tools and resources, but there are no people to talk to and things to talk about. So the children need experiences, as I already mentioned, varied experiences in their communities, in their neighborhoods, to be attractive communication partners, to have things to talk about. And there is important asymmetry surrounding the concept, I think, of competence we focus so much on, because competence links abilities and capabilities with tasks. But through performance of tasks, it's directly observable. So we observe the abilities or capabilities that underlie the performance are not observable. So we infer their presence or otherwise on the basis of the performance. So assessment of competence is necessarily based on inference from samples of performance, which depends on the environmental characteristics. That's why I made a point early on that so much, and if you remember my library, it's about thinking about those environmental aspects. So we need supportive communication partners. Who are those? They're knowledgeable partners. There are all of us. There are parents, teachers, therapists, people in the community, people in a local shop or cafe or restaurant that understand that the child that has a communication device and is in a wheelchair can in fact communicate and is able to do so. So how can we intervene? Well, it is just going out. It is providing often a therapy in the real life setting. It's just going out with a child and modeling for the community, people in the community, that this is possible and there is a genuine real interaction. So the child can buy something in a store, or the child can participate in a local theater, or the child can go to the library and order a book. And the children need robust social networks. So Also, we need the opportunities to attend activities. Children need opportunities to attend activity settings with the same peers over time to develop lasting connections and friendships. So that is a key, the building relationships, because we know from research that for few studies in AAC that look at long-term outcomes, that the adults had skills. They could operate a communication device. They could spell. They had those skills, but what they lacked is social relationships. So it's not enough to put a ramp, right, in front of to access a hockey arena. It is not enough to go there for children at certain age with their parents, because other children go with peers. So it's also for the parents to let children go as they typically parents would at certain age, and have the trust, and the children with disabilities can be with their peers in activity settings. So it is about relationship building and reciprocity, and role of peers and siblings, very special role that siblings also play in lives of children that we work with. And the last door, it's about communication culture. So here, it is like, I see it as the overarching door of inclusion towards communicative access. And it has to happen to move forward. So what is perceived as inclusion is changing. We see that shift that in the society, what is known, what has been unknown before. So we focus on the physical aspect of the accessibility, for example, and inclusion for so long. And before that, when I was growing up, that wasn't even so necessary, obvious, that was lacking. And we understand physical disability. However, now I see this knowledge revolution almost. What is and means communicative access? People understand different diagnoses. People know, young people, my students, they understand as the issues, for example, or challenges experienced by children with autism or with cerebral palsy. So there's this revolution of knowledge transfer, which is great to see. But we need structures and overarching efforts to make that work. So we have those pockets, as I put here some of the examples, that we see people who use augmentative communication in leadership roles, sitting on different committees, of course. We have the Breaking the Ice conference in Toronto every 2 years, that is actually a conference of people who use augmentative and alternative communication, and different age children come there with parents and also adults, and they talk about issues relevant to them, that they concern them. We have Communication Disabilities Access Canada. We have now we'll be developing accessibility standards, augmentative and alternative communication, involving people that use augmentative communication and their parents. So there's lots happening, but we need to build structural support around it, and we need almost a systemic change to have funding in the right place. So to translate to funding and to services. So where we need the services, we need to follow the children in the places that they are in a real life. One of the parents said it very well, that we need this quantum leap and in our thinking in terms of services that we provide, because those children will be left behind when they go to the real world. As this is not necessarily happening. We see children at school, we see children at the clinics. We are not with them often in the communities. It has been funded in my own practice as mostly as a research projects or some of the projects that we have been doing, but it's not sustainable constant funding. It's not how we deliver necessary services. So we need this forward thinking and provide the environmental structure and process network of support and resources for changing services. And that matters to really mobilize at critical junctions and transitions. And transitions are different for of course, how can we understand that? To mobilize the support network that we create and the resources that are there. And it has to happen immediately and needs to be longer and way sooner, as I said. So one mother of a child I work with, and he became 21, and that's where you finish school in Ontario, high school. She said, "I'm standing at the edge of a cliff." And that, I remember that because it was very powerful to see that, yes, there was a program that addressed maybe career aspirations, but it's not enough to have a program like that. It needs to be longer involvement and the whole system of network of system, and not the silos of services. So Zoe, do you remember Zoe? So let's open some doors for her. We want the future of hope and vision. So this is how it's going to look for Zoe. For Zoe, the doors opened. So she became actually self-determined. Her parents were very actively involved and looking for opportunities. So she played with the kids in the neighborhood. She could use her talker and her communication devices on the bus, which very often is on the school bus, which very often is not allowed for safety purposes. She was allowed to walk to school with her friend next door, which also not initially was allowed because of safety. But over time, they walked together to school. And Zoe makes decisions. She has multiple ways to communicate. She has different communication tools. Also uses Alexa and smart home devices to control her environment. She uses Alexa for self-initiated learning, checking facts, etc. She's also part of Making Makers Change organization that I mentioned to you, and helps with design of new technology. She also does shopping online. And she has a robust network of friends, and especially that very one close friend who walked with her over the years to school. Did they talk? I don't think so, because when you drive a wheelchair, you know, mounting communication devices realistically somewhere, it's not working. But they hang out together, they spent time together, and they became very close friends that share secrets. So she's happy, connected, belongs to a local book club in her neighborhood. And maybe when she becomes adult, she will belong to a club, to a wine club. She hangs around with her friends a lot. And she is engaged meaningfully in activities with others, with shared distribution of control and responsibility. And that's the key point. And she wants to become a teacher and is planning to go to the university. So her mother, when she was 15, said, "Then I heard her talk to her friends, like with friends that are verbal, they actually have conversation. Like somebody told me the other day, they were talking about boyfriends. And that was just like, are you kidding me? But yeah, she is 15. So family and child-centered practice points to the importance of supporting the active participation of children with their families and communities, and as per their interests and goals. And we should ask children about their interests and goals. Doesn't matter how difficult it is. And sometimes if we don't know if they are able to answer, we should continue to try to do so. We should speak directly to the children, not to their parents. We should attempt that. Children need opportunities to be in control, choose and meaningfully engage in typical childhood activities where they live. and having say in things that are important to them. And interventions must address the contextual elements needed to support the active child, some of which I highlighted today. And recognizing, again, that active does not necessarily mean physically doing. So we are all on the journey to accomplish such an outcome for other children that Zoe was able to accomplish. And research shows many barriers and some doors that can be and were opened, and some possibilities, which are, as I said at the beginning, quite messy, and we're trying to untangle all the difficulties involved in them and how to systematically maybe assess, provide better assessment, and how to systematically provide better intervention, which are participation focused, which are still really emerging. And I have shown you a few examples today, and here we are all at this conference, and I think through participating in this conference, just looking through the program, we can open many other doors to unlock a potential of a child like Zoe. And it is complex. We need to do it together. We need to do it together as professionals. We need to do it together with families, and we need to do it in a real life settings and with long-term goals in mind. Not only here now functionally participating in a circle time, but where does it lead? What is next? So thank you for your attention, and hopefully we can unlock many of the unlocked doors together.
Thank you very much, Beata, for a very passionate talk. We feel really the passion that you have for improving participation for all of these children, but it's a passion which is very much grounded in applied research, and that is something, I mean, that we really appreciate as an academy. We're over time, but I'm just going to ask you one question maybe, and sorry for those for whom I won't have been able to process their questions. The question is, how much do you think children's, families and schools' acceptance of EAC and technical aids is a barrier on participation? And maybe my question on that is, our own use of technology over the last 10 years, has that changed things? And after that is, how is it best to actually work on this?
So the first part of your question was about can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Attitudes as barriers, that is children's attitudes, families' attitudes, schools' attitudes. Are these barriers to accepting technical aids?
Well, I think it has changed, and that was the second your question. I see it changing over there. When I started to practice in 1995, many of those devices were separate and the system was separate. So we even had the technology which was just for school, technology that was for home. I see that it's much better coordinated now, and I see that the attitudes are changing when the people are realizing the potential of the communication, I believe. But the challenge is the time. The challenge, and I will not deny, the challenge is the time, that very often technology, it's not the best solution, that there are other quicker ways to communicate when the individuals are able to construct the message with others in a more social way. So there are still attitudinal barriers because of the time, because of I believe well, the answers very often is, and it's challenging, that there are 30 other children in a classroom. We have mainstream school in Ontario, and how do I, it takes time but there are ways to weave it into the classroom situations. For example, when the child is using the device, you can let the child to compose the message or the answer, and you can come back later to the child. So I see it changing. It's optimistic. I think I wanted to leave on the optimistic note that I see it changing over the years of practice. We're getting way better at it. That I think we have way also to go to create that culture, as I said at the end, the culture that everybody understands that.
Thank you very much. Maybe just a last question on where for you is the future of participation-related research? Where next?
Where next? I think I really would like to look more into the interventions that are based in our neighborhoods and in our communities, and see what is possible working together with families and interdisciplinary practice, transdisciplinary practice working together with families. But how can we move those? So I have done some work in the libraries, and I'm doing another research in local children, in like supporting children's play and participation with activities that are occurring naturally in the neighborhoods. And how do we bring children with disabilities there in a way that allows them to be on equal footage, not necessarily the other way, that the other kids are helpers to those kids.
Well, thanks a lot, Beata. As I said, yeah, it was inspiring talk. One of the things that I kept was basically that I need help does not mean I'm dependent. On the contrary, it means I'm in control. And I think that was very, very inspiring. So thank you to all of the participants in this session, which I am now going to close. A small break and then back at 12:30.